Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Nancy P., recovered in West Newton, Massachusetts, leading the OA Blackrock meeting. And let's start with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, Overeaters Anonymous is a fellowship of individuals who, through shared experience, strength, and hope, are recovering from compulsive overeating. We welcome everyone who wants to stop eating compulsively. There are no dues or fees for members. We are self-supporting through our own contributions, neither soliciting nor accepting outside donations. OA is not affiliated with any public or private organization, political movement, ideology, or religious doctrine. We take no position on outside issues. Our primary purpose is to abstain from compulsive overeating and compulsive food behaviors and to carry the message of recovery through the 12 steps of OA to those who still suffer. So first, I'm going to ask Jim to read how it works.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jim, compulsive overeater. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these, we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember, we deal with food, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. And
Thank you.
Okay.
So now I forgot who was going to read the steps. Carol? Oh no.
I can go on if you want.
I can do it, Nancy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Carol, I'm a recovered compulsive overeater. And here are the steps we took, which is suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over food and our lives become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision in our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry the message to the alcoholic, the compulsive overeater, and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you, Carol. Now, Michael, can you please read more about compulsive overeating?
Yes, I can indeed. Good evening all. I'm Michael and I'm a compulsive overeater. A vision for you. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the person who is still sick. The answer will come if your house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is a great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us on your trudge as you trudge the road to happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thank you, Michael. Rebecca, can you please read the traditions?
Fantastic. Do you want me to read all of them or just the tradition of the month?
Whichever is
The tradition
normal.
of the month, Rebecca.
Okay, great. Tradition 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, films, television, and other public media of communication. Thanks for letting me do so.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And then do we read a vision for you and the promises now or after the speaker or at the end?
A vision for you now and the promises at the end, Nancy.
Okay, great. And then Audrey, can you do the promises, please? I'm sorry, a vision for you. That would be, I had my thing here. Margaret D. Right?
I think we've read a vision for you, have we?
Yeah, it's more about alcoholism.
More about alcoholism.
Oh,
I think.
I thought, oh, did he just, I'm sorry. I was like so frantically looking at my list to make sure I have everything.
Yeah, sure.
So whatever we didn't read, if you could just read that.
Yeah, okay.
That'd be great.
Audrey, a grateful recovered compulsive overeater. Thanks, Nancy, for your service. More about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, we will control and enjoy drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of the illusion is astonishing, and many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the fourth step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that they were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by a still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We were convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. We are like men who have lost their legs, they never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every manageable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery followed by always a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet.
Thank you, Audrey. Okay. It is my very great pleasure to introduce Esther C. from Toronto to give her experience, strength, and hope to all of us. Esther, take it away.
There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Esther C. and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater in Canada. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to see the faces of the voices that I've come to hear sometimes on the line. I'll tell you a little bit about my story and what it was like, what changed, what it's like now, and maybe some of you will hear, your story in there, and it'll be somehow useful to you. I've been a compulsive overeater my entire life, probably since I was born. I don't remember a time where I wasn't running to the food or running away from the food. For those of you who grew up as fat or overweight children, you might remember what that's like. Anytime I was eating, if I was enjoying my food, I wasn't able to control it. And if I was controlling my food, I for sure wasn't enjoying it. And my childhood, vis-a-vis the food, was characterized by three feelings, three distinct things: the pain, the shame, and the hopelessness. So what was the pain about? It's not fun to be a fat kid, as I'm sure you know or heard. I couldn't wear what the other kids wore. I couldn't do some of the activities. We have a really nice place downtown called Children's Village, and there's a sign there and says, once you reach 12, or I think it was like 120 pounds, you couldn't go on anymore. So I'm like at 120 pounds long before I was 12. I remember feeling very ashamed about that. I remember telling my friends, oh, it's so babyish, let's find something else to do. But really inside, it was very painful for me. In those days, there wasn't as progressive as it is today, and there wasn't so much available in plus sizes. I remember wearing boys' clothes because the men's extra large somehow was larger than the ladies' extra large. So that's sort of how I got through. Plus sizes didn't really become popular until I was in high school. Of course, there was the shame of the, having this problem, because people, like, they were baffled. My parents, my friends, the doctors, like, I mean, just stop eating, right? I would say to myself, like, if you were born and you couldn't walk, right? Someone's born and they can't walk, or they're missing a limb, then everybody understands why, they can't do what everyone else is doing. But nobody could understand why I would eat, even though it caused me pain, even though I didn't want to, and even though I tried over and over again to stop. And to tell you the truth, I was also ashamed of myself. Like, Esther, what's with you? We all know how to lose weight. Just stop eating. And yet I couldn't. I would look at these people who could diet, or look at these people who were interested in food, and I was ashamed. I'm like, they must be somehow better than me because I haven't yet figured out how to stop eating. And of course, the biggest or the most overpowering feeling was the feeling of hopelessness. Like the thought that here I am at the beginning of my life. I hope to live for a long, long time. There's so many things I want to do. And everything is weighed down by this problem that I have with food, like everything, right? Not just social, but this idea that, like, this is going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to be fighting food forever. So by the time I graduated high school, I figured out that I know how to lose weight, right? I understood what calories were about, and I understood about diets. I figured there was something wrong in here, and that's why I couldn't lose the weight. So I said, well, if I figure out why I eat, then I'll stop eating. So thereafter began 10 years of therapy, this type of therapy, that type of therapy. I'm not knocking therapy. I think it helps when it helps. It didn't help me at all. It actually brought up a lot of issues that I didn't even know I had. It also brought up a lot of blame for my compulsive overeating. There was always someone to blame. It was society. It was too much junk food. It was too permissive upbringing, too restrictive upbringing. Culturally, everyone eats, like, whatever it was. They didn't solve my food problem, and things didn't get better for me. And in fact, things got worse. Why? Because already in my 20s, that's when I married, that's when I started a family. So my disease did not just affect my body, but it affected all my relationships. So when I was on my own, a teenager in my room, I could be moody, go to my room, shut the door behind me, and yell at everybody, and it's done. But when I'm supposed to be the nucleus of the family, then the song I sing affects the dance that everyone else does. And I could tell you, it was not a happy home. And I could feel like I didn't know why that was. Like, I certainly was intelligent enough, and I had the family love and support that you think would be enough. And yet there was just a piece, something here some puzzle piece I couldn't figure out. And I knew it had to do the food. Like, it didn't make sense. Like, so what does being fat have to do with not managing in life? I didn't know, but I just knew that the food somehow was at the source of all this. I had tried Overeaters Anonymous meetings in the Toronto area, but I got there, and of course it was like in a different neighborhood, and I didn't feel like I related to anybody. And there were lots of people there who were very overweight, talking up a storm about love, peace, God, whatever. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be fat, and they're fat. So, like, I wasn't interested in what they were offering. So I left. And I didn't come back for a while. Once every couple of years, I'd show up in a meeting and nothing had changed. Everything was the same. And things are starting to get worse and worse. Especially I have and still do have a lot of medical issues, mobility issues. And, I was at a top weight of about 260 pounds, and 260 pounds on a body that's struggling with other medical problems makes life just impossible. And there was no area of my life that wasn't affected by the food. I just mentioned to you the physical aspect, socially. I hated myself, right? I was the fattest one, always in the crowd. I don't know. I think I was reasonably intelligent. I couldn't finish school. I didn't really hold down a job. I used the excuse that, I wanted to stay home with the kids. But the truth is, I didn't seem to succeed in any job that I took. Spiritually, I had a relationship with a God of my understanding, but it was, I don't know, I was kind of mad. I'm thinking, I keep asking you to be slim and to take the food problem away from me, and you keep ignoring me. So, nothing was happening there. All the relationships in my life were affected by the food. All my dreams and hopes, and anything related to career, finances for sure. When I weighed 260 pounds, that's double what a person, my size is supposed to weigh. So I'm eating double. So I'm not feeding a family of whatever anymore. There's one extra person that I'm feeding the family. And then of course there's all those clothes in the closet, right? Big, bigger, biggest, and super sized. I think I got to top size of 24 or 26. Also, that costs a lot of money. And I couldn't manage at home, couldn't manage. There's no, I was home all day, and at one point all my kids were in school all day. Could have done more at home, but everything was hard. Always had to call, housekeepers and nannies to help me because I couldn't manage. So every area of my life that, was touched by the food in a negative way. And at some point it became so bad that I called my friend yet to complain again. And I have no idea why she said this. And she actually doesn't remember even saying this. She says, Esther, I don't want to hear about your food or your weight anymore. You go to an OA meeting. She said to me, she wanted me to go to an OA meeting to do something that I found unpleasant. And she felt that there was some psychological benefit to that. So I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to be cut off from this friend. So I decided to go to a meeting. At the time, the kids were still young enough that getting out at night was hard. So one of the things I did was either I'd heard or I'd bumped into someone who mentioned something about phone meetings. So I got on a phone meeting, and it was a particular stream of OA where they had, strong opinions as to what you ate and how you did the program and the tools, etc. But I was perfectly happy to do whatever they said, because at that point I was walking with a cane. I was maybe 30, in my early 30s. I was walking with a cane, and things were really bad. And I was starting to get calls from school, and the kids were acting out. And I realized that a lot of their acting out had to do with my behavior at home and the kind of home that they were growing up in. So I got on these phone meetings, and I found a sponsor pretty soon, and whatever she told me to do, I did. And lo and behold, within a couple of years, I had lost all my weight. I was feeling amazing. I was so much enjoying being with my fellows in Overeaters Anonymous. I was thrilled to pieces to find people who had the same problem I had. I was happy to learn about my allergy. In this particular group, they tell you what to eat. So it wasn't like I sat down and thought about my binge foods, but they told me what my binge foods were. And the truth is that a lot of what they told me was correct for me in terms of what my binge foods were. And also the elimination of certain foods from my diet really helped my physical condition. It wasn't long before I was able to drastically reduce and eventually eliminate the painkillers. I still have to take some, types of drugs, but in terms of like that feeling I had, dragging around that extra 120 pounds, I don't have that anymore. And I certainly don't walk with a cane, thank God. So there I am, and I'm feeling good, and it's a couple years go by, and I'm doing a lot of service, I'm meeting a lot of people, I'm loving it. And then it started to feel like I got hungry again. Now in those groups, they did talk about the steps, but it was more like, oh, and there are steps and you should do them, and you can go to this group and do the steps, or go with them and do the steps, and do the steps this way, that way. It was, my sponsor was just someone who I would chit chat every day for 15 minutes with, and then tell her what I was eating. But I guess you'd call it unprofessional advice. That's what she would give me. But she didn't take me through the steps. mostly because she herself hadn't gone through steps. I think she at the time was on step 3. So I'm, not eating, which is good, and I'm slimmer and have a healthy body weight, which is great. But I haven't dealt with the mental obsession. I've, that pink cloud stage, it was very dramatic for me because of how large I was and because I had so many medical conditions associated with the obesity. So the pink cloud stage was very, what's the word? I could feel it a lot. Like I imagine that if someone comes in and has a food problem, but only has 15 pounds to lose, perhaps that pink cloud stage won't last for long. But for me, it did. So there I am, at a healthy body weight. I'm doing well in the program, but inside there's something niggling. And I started to argue with my sponsor about foods. I said, I need more because of this, because of that. And we were arguing over food. Someone alerted me to a big book study. It's no longer in existence, but at the time, there was a big book study in the telephone, and they had a Sunday special edition, and a fellow gets on the phone and he talks about the mental obsession. And he said that putting down the food and getting abstinent is important, but that if I did not recover, then that mental obsession is going to overtake me and I'm going to eat again. And I thought, oh my God, I better run, not walk, and do those steps, because exactly what he was describing was exactly what I was feeling. So, but it took me a while to find someone to take me through the steps. I think I was part of a step study, but it was like they would take the step and they would like do a bit of reading here, a bit of reading there, a bit of reading there. It was more like a step study as opposed to actually doing the steps. Eventually one day I was in my room and I snuck a big bag of chips to my room and I looked at the ingredients. I said, well, I eat potatoes and I eat oil and I eat salt. Those are all on my food plan. And I ate that entire bag, went downstairs, got another bag, ate the entire second bag. And then I remember going to a social function afterwards. And I remember I had still lost weight. It was holiday time and people were like, wow, you look amazing, right? Because they hadn't seen me, I don't know, in a year and a half since I was fat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if only they knew that, someone once said, like, if you think of an escalator, 2 people could be meeting at the same place. One is on the way up, one is on the way down. So there I was, looking good, I guess, from the previous 2 years, but on my way down. And that was a binge, although that's where it ended. I didn't eat anymore because I was petrified, because all I could think about was that cane and how much pain that cane has caused me, and how many times I took that cane in my hand and I smashed the wall out of anger because I was so desperate to find a solution. And just thinking of that gave me just sent a fear through me. And I said, Esther, you are standing at the edge of a cliff now. You've eaten those 2 bags of chips. What's it going to be? So then I sat by the phone and I started making calls, and I started making calls to any phone number that appeared anywhere. And eventually I found my step sponsor. So this was the beginning of a new life for me. This was about 11 and a half years ago. Met my sponsor. She took me through the 12 steps as outlined in the big book. And of course, my life has changed since then. I don't think there's time to talk about all the steps. What I will say is every single area of my life that was affected by the disease was improved, and many things, even dramatically so, through recovery. I had continued to remain, even through that little 2-day binge, I continued to remain, not 2-day, 2-bag binge. I continued to remain at a healthy body weight. So that didn't change, but there was one great change, which was unexpected for me. I always knew that if I ate less, I would lose weight. I mean, you don't need to even be a doctor to know that. But there's one gift of the program which I had not anticipated, which they spoke about, but until I experienced it, it was nothing like even reading about it. And that is that state called being recovered, where I'm no longer fighting the food. So on page 85 of the big book, it talks about what that state is like. What does it mean to be recovered? Does it mean that I'm done? It doesn't mean that I'm done. I expect that I'm going to be compulsive overeater forever, which is fine, actually, from my point of view. But what it's telling me is that, like a stay of execution, so long as I do
5
A,
minutes.
B, 5 minutes, thank you. So long as I do A, B, and C, then I could be recovered, and then I no longer have to, and then I don't go back to the food. But let me describe what it says here. It tells me, it's page 84 and 85, I've ceased fighting anything, anyone. Sanity will have returned. I will seldom be interested in my binge foods. If I'm tempted, I recoil as if from a hot flame. I react sanely and normally. This happens automatically. I'm not fighting it. I'm not avoiding temptation. I have not even sworn off. I'm in a safe and neutral position. I never thought I would have that. Even in my best dieting days, I just remember following the food that I knew I couldn't have. This is the great gift of the program. And this is something that I can't describe what that means, not to be fighting the food. And I'll tell you, I don't have any cravings for my binge foods anymore. And over the years, more foods have been added to my binge food list. I actually had my first food plan, and in my, I have a miniature, whatever, big book, a pocket big book, and every time a new foods I've come across, then I just jot it down because it's easy to forget, especially foods that are seasonal that I don't see all year. This idea of not being, not fighting the food is very important for me, because I find that in a way that they're very good about talking about abstinence, and certain groups in OA talk about abstinence of foods you shouldn't eat, but not as much focus. I think the more the focus should be on the mental obsession and how to take care of that, right? So in the first, the big book tells us that the psychic change is what's going to save us from that continuous loop of, eating, eating that leads to binging, that leads to swearing off, that leads to restless, irritable discontent, and then, back into the food, and around and around and around it goes. That a psychic change is the only thing that's going to pluck me out of that cycle. And this happens through the 12 steps. So in steps 1 and 2, I come to the conclusion that I am a compulsive overeater and my life is unmanageable. If your life is still manageable, right, while you're compulsive eating, it's going to be harder, I think, to get with the program to do what you have to do, right? My life was not manageable at that point. Step 2 was coming to believe in a power greater than myself. And that was an easy step for me in some way, because I had a higher power and I wasn't fighting the idea of a higher power. And my sponsor didn't insist that I had to have like some grand idea of what this higher power is, or will do for me. She just came to believe in a power greater than yourself. Is that you? Is that where you are? Great. Onwards to step 3, which is where I made a decision. What's the decision I make? It's not about surrender to me, because the step doesn't say the word surrender. It's about turning my will. This was my path, and now I'm turning my will over to the care of the God of my understanding. So it's like, God, you're the one that's got the power to solve my problem. So I might as well, join your team. What does your team do? Well, that's my job on a day-to-day basis, especially in steps 10 and 11. Figure out what higher power expects of me, what the higher power's will is for me. Try to align myself with that and go. And the parable I like to give with that is a surfer, someone who surfs. I've never surfed. There's the wave, and the wave. If you catch the wave, I guess you have a great time. I mean, these surfers look like they're having a good time. But what happens if you decide you're going to, go when you want, in the way that you want? You're going to either not go anywhere, or you could, God forbid, sink and drown. So that's how it was with me. Esther, if you want to follow the flow of the God of your understanding, you will have a good life. If you decide it's going to be your way, or if you're saying, I'm not accepting God's will for me, then I'm fighting. Then I'm fighting God, and I'm blocked from God, and I have no access to what higher power is going to do, which is to solve my problem. And the way I stay unblocked from the God of my understanding is, originally I did steps 4 through 9. And on a daily basis, I do that in a sort of miniature truncated way, which we would call step 10. And then of course, 11 step are the things that I do to keep that relationship growing and developing. And then 12 step, of course, is to carry the message. My recovery doesn't get better by hearing about it or reading about it. Rather, it gets better by giving it over. It's the sponsoring that has developed my program much more than the original step work I did with my sponsor. The original step work I did with the sponsor was nothing special. It was over the course of a few weeks. We did it. There's nothing like, lightning about it. I just did it. And then I was recovered. And now in that sort of infant stage, I had to solidify everything I had learned, and that was really done through the step work. what can I tell you? It's a better, to say it's a better life, it's like an understatement. Any of you play jump rope as little kids? So, you know, the rope is coming and there was always that kid who like jumped in at the wrong time and then got caught in the jump rope. But that feeling of like knowing like when to go in and jumping at the right time, that's how it feels like for me. That if I live this way, then it feels smooth, it feels good, it feels like I'm, you know, that I could be who God really wants me to be, right? I feel like I'm here for a reason, and fulfilling what I believe is my purpose is something that's the most self-esteem building thing that I've ever done, right? I've always been chasing my self-esteem, how to have more of it, and etc. How to do whatever. Is it time ready? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up with that and say that's just a little glimpse to the richness of what's available in this program and what it's done for me. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. Excellent job. So good to hear you. So we're going to open up the lines for sharing now. And Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind still keeping time, we'll take people to share for 3 minutes. Do we start with 3 minutes? 2 minutes.
We start with 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay, so 3 minutes. Rebecca, take it away.
Thanks, Rebecca, compulsive overeater. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be first. I'll just set the timer. Thank you so much, Nancy, for your service, everyone reading today. And thank you so much, Esther, for that share. Oh, I love a good analogy, a good image that kind of helps me to understand my disease and understand, you know, recovery. And your share was full of so many beautiful ones. I loved what you were saying at the end about, you know, jumping into the kind of skipping game, you know, and just this idea of flow. And the consequence of not flow, which is that I'm either going to go nowhere or I'm going to drown. And I was drowning for years, or going nowhere, you know, where it was kind of okay because I wasn't drowning, but it was still terrible, you know. But how beautiful to just go with. And it's such a simple concept. Now it feels like, yeah, it's a total no-brainer. And I should have done this years ago, but like, you know, self-will, it was difficult. It was really tough to do that. But yeah, my higher power's will for me is like, you know, being that surfer, you know, and is finding that perfect wave, and it feels good, right? And basically, I need to get out of my own way. I need to stop just plonking in anywhere and expecting like different results to happen. But yeah, you know, I loved what you said about your clothes as well, from kind of bigger to biggest, you know. It was so insane. It's so unmanageable, like living my life the way that I did, but I was completely powerless, you know, and I was full of self-will. And so that had to be the consequence, you know, when I had to suffer. And it was pain that brought me in. And I'm glad that today I have this beautiful way of living. And yeah, just listening to all the readings earlier, and just being home, you know, and just kind of being with you all. It's just so, yeah, it's a life beyond my wildest dreams. So I'm grateful to you all. Thanks, I pass.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Rebecca. Michelle H., you're next. Go ahead.
Good evening, all, or good afternoon to any on the other side of the pond. Michelle is my name. I'm a compulsive overeater in recovery. And thank you, Esther, for such a wonderful share. A lot of what you said, I could draw parallels with, especially the pain and shame and hopelessness of childhood. And I know I've told some, I've shared at this meeting before, but, you know, I was the child that my mother sent to a party with a second dress, you know, not because I wanted to show off my clothes, because I was going to throw up on my first dress. And then I was bigger than any other child there, so there would have been no other clothes to fit me. So even then, back then, my mother knew that I couldn't control myself out of her sight. And I really identified when you said that you know, felt like the fattest one in the room. I felt like that so many times, and at the same time feeling like the smallest and worthless person while taking up most space. And it was particularly, you know, you've spoken about your mobility issues. 3 years ago, I faced a mobility issue, and the consultant on no uncertain terms said, you've got to lose 3 stone, girl, you know. And so I think that's, is that 20, maybe it's about 40 pounds or so. I'm trying to convert stones into pounds here. But I went, that was frothy emotional appeal to me. It's only now that I've had worse days than that. And I went on to put on another 40 pounds after that. It's only now that I can look back and I have the horror of what could happen, you know, the mobility issues that I could face. And then I need to continue working myself to a healthy body weight. And I just love what you said about how you described recovery, because sometimes it's so hard when we're in recovery to describe how it feels like. You just said it's like you feel so smooth and so good, and it does. And that was just, I loved that. I had to write that down because it's hard sometimes to put words on what is a feeling where there was pain before. So thank you so much for every single word of your share, and thanks for everybody being on the call here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Alan H., you're up next.
Hi guys, Alan, compulsive reader, anorexic bulimic. Yeah, thank you so much, Esther, for your wonderful share. I just really liked how you talked about, you know, the idea of going back to the food is there, that mental obsession, you know, but it's the memory of the pain that we went through while we were in the food, you know, that stops you from crossing that line, or like taking that last step off the cliff, you know, diving back into it. Like OA, like it's funny how much clarity you get from working through the steps, because, you know, before I came to OA, it just was my life, and I was accepting, like, I'm going to binge, purge, and starve myself, and this is it, and that's it. You know, there's no other way. You know, the doctors don't get it. Nobody understands. This is just my life. Get on with it. You know, it'll be painful. But OA ruins binging. And that's just a fact, you know, because you think about it, you're tempted by it when things aren't right, when you don't feel right. Your head goes to the food because you think it'll solve it, but it won't. And that's the clarity you get. And I really think just the pain of the stuff you went through, for me, having an eating disorder was absolutely the most loneliest thing ever, you know. And then you get to see the gifts of recovery, you know, and you talked a lot about that, and that I have written on my wall so I can see them every morning, you know, the difference between day one and today, because I need a constant reminder, because sometimes, you know, that mental obsession comes in and it's all very tempting, but you remember what it brought you to. But yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say that, and thank you for your share, and thanks for your service, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Audrey, you're up next, followed by Carol O.
Thanks, Nancy, and thanks, Esther, for your fabulous share. But yeah, it was quite emotional as well. There was parts of it that, you know, it just brought me back to being that kid in school, you know. You know, I had to go to a special place to get a school uniform. I wasn't where everybody else. And then my grandmother used to make my clothes, you know, so I was very untrendy also as being like the biggest kid in the group. You know, but when I think of that shame and, you know, everything that came with disease, you know, there is a part that it's a bit, you know, it comforts me today to know that I have an illness, you know, that I have an illness, and that I also have a solution. And the solution that you shared, you know, is this program, you know, the wonder of it, of just being able to get up in the morning and just being able to live. I existed for the last 42 years, you know, and only recently am I, you know, starting to be present with people, you know, looking at people, asking them how they are, you know, doing an outreach call, laughing, you know, I can laugh at the disease today. You know, I couldn't laugh on it when I was in it last year, you know, and just being able to, you know, as you said, the solution of being able to live, you know, and it's one day at a time, you know. So for anybody that's on the line, newcomers or returning members, you know, we're all here in the same fellowship, you know, we're like the people on the ship, you know, that we all have the same solution, you know, and it's one day at a time that we have to, you know, we just have. So with that, I'll pass, and thanks again for your share.
Thanks, Audrey. Carol O, you're up.
Thanks, Nancy, for your service. And oh, Esther, thank you so much for that share. It was so inspirational. And I felt like one of the dogs in the car nodding my head the whole way throughout, because I really identified with a lot of what you said. Yeah, the clothes and having to get special clothes made. I remember when my baby son got sick on me and I was in my parents' house and they had to sew together clothes for me to go home in because they couldn't find anything that would fit me. And yeah, the shame, the hopelessness, the embarrassment, all of that. But what really struck me too was, you know, what you said about when you're a teenager, you can stamp up the stairs, slam the door and shut the world out. But when you're married with kids, I was still doing that. I was still shutting myself off and slamming the door. And then when you talked about it, put chills through my body when the kids started to act out, because I was the crazy one in my family, and no wonder my kids were acting out, because look at the example that I shared with them. Look at what I was doing, and what messages was I giving them? This is the way I dealt with or not dealt with emotions. I would act out myself. So how would I expect anything different from my children when I didn't learn to grow up first? So how could I parent them? Yeah, and you talked about therapy, and therapy alone, you know, I tried everything. I've tried medication, psychiatrists, treatment centers, self-help books ad infinitum. And yeah, therapy opens up a different, but if I'm not emotionally sober, how can I deal with therapy? How can I look at myself? How can I even, I really learned in the program through work and the steps. And I remember being like you and saying, God, you did take this away. I'm begging you for years, take this away, stop the food, stop the eating. And I would just wanted God to take it away, but I wasn't willing to do anything to meet God halfway. And it was only when I did, and my sponsor took me through the steps and encouraged me to sponsor other people and take them through the steps, that continual daily working of the program, because you said it's a program of action. It's not a program of being or thinking, it's a program of action. And if I don't keep on going up that escalator, I'm going to literally roll back down again. And it's scary. It centers in my mind. It's my thinking that drives me to the food. And that neutrality you talked about, I never thought I could have that. I never thought I would be one of those people that could have neutrality, because my life depended on food, or so I thought. I thought I couldn't live with it, and I thought I couldn't live without it. And having that freedom, that fluidity, that having my life filled with so many other things that's not food related, and being the person God wants me to be, and to be of service to others, because when I'm in the food, I'm completely absorbed about me, my world, my pain, and I don't see anything or anyone else. And I can't be available. I'm not available to me, so how can I be available to anybody? Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for doing service tonight.
Thank you, Carol. Jim L, followed by Maria F.
Good evening, everyone. Jim here, compulsive overeater in Dublin. Thank you, Nancy, for your great service. And Esther, wow, what a beautiful story. What a beautiful testimony you shared. I used to work in Mexico City 30 years ago, and a lovely lady I worked with, her name was Esther in Spanish, you know, and you even favor her a little bit. So I'm having like an, is it odd or is it God experience? But no, when you mentioned the clothing, growing up always way overweight and all that, I remember the husky sections for boys in the shops in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up. It was the husky section. I remember when I made my first communion, the jacket that I had, still it wasn't buttoning properly, and I remember I was told I looked like an overstuffed sausage. You know, and it's an image that's never left me. You know, and you talked a lot about body changes whether it was talking about the cane that you came to rely on. And for me too, it was a hip replacement 5 years ago. And a couple years ago, it was kidney stones, and just the things that happen with being unhealthy and, you know, at a certain age as well. It's just hard to believe that 8 years ago, just 8 short years ago, I walked 250 kilometers of the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And, you know, now I don't even think I could walk 5 kilometers of it. But, you know, the things that you really talked about, the mental obsession, for me, that was the longest thing that stayed with me. And up until then, up until I lost the mental obsession, this was just a diet. This was just a diet program. And there was nothing else special about OA than the fact that it was just another diet. But once you deal with the mental obsession and things change in that regard, that's when it took a whole new turn for me. And then, you know, just as you work through the program, you know, just all the key things you touched on, and you know, giving service to be helpful, to be useful to other people, to give back what was so freely given to us, you know. So yeah, so you gave some good reminders tonight, and to, you know, stop hiding, be a little more out there and open, and sharing with others and useful for other people. So thank you so much, and I'll pass.
You're muted, Nancy.
Got muted by accident. Sorry. Thank you, Jim. Maria F, you're up, followed by Maria D.
Thanks so much, Nancy, and thanks for your service. And thanks, Esther. I've heard you a few times, so it's great to see you and to put a face to the name. And like you, I was definitely born a compulsive overeater. Yeah, from the cradle. You know, I was my parents would have talked about never being able to give me enough food, you know, bring me to the doctor because I was always hungry when I was 18 months. And like you said as well, I would have blamed everybody else in life, you know, that I had this problem, that I had this compulsive overeating. I blamed them for everything, but that was just one of the things that I blamed other people for. And yeah, like I shared, you know, in Ireland, confirmations and communions are big deals, like they're big things. I was the biggest girl in the school, you know, and my mother traipsing around town to try and find something to wear for my confirmation. And it just came to be something that fit me. You know, it wasn't particularly nice, you know, and that's what clothes became. They weren't particularly nice. It was if they cover you, you know, if they can kind of cover my size and cover up the lumps and the bumps. And yeah, and how, you know, my weight held me back, you know, in things that I couldn't turn up for life. Because of weight and size, but mainly because of how I thought, you know, how I thought about things, how I saw the world. And you talked about that when you heard the special edition and they talked about the mental obsession. Because I just thought it was about food. I came into the rooms just thinking that I had a problem with food. And, you know, it was in the rooms that I learned, you know, my problem, the main problem with the alcoholic compulsive overeater centre is in their mind. It's in my head, you know, it's in how I think. In how we see things. And just as you were sharing, I was just thinking of that story in the big book, you know, when Roland Hazard goes to Dr. Young, you know, and he asks him, is there any hope for him? And he says, the only hope for you is a psychic change, you know, and a right way of thinking, you know, that I had to get a right way of thinking because I had a skewed way of thinking. And that was the beginning for me, you know, just go. And I found that through the steps, you know, I found that psychic change came through the steps. And, you know, we're not bad people here trying to get good, you know, we're sick people trying to get well, you know. And as somebody shared, you know, we've got a common bond here. And the solution for me was through a higher power. You know, I can't do this on my own. I can't do living on my own. You know, I need steps. I couldn't eat, you know, something as simple as food, you know, and I had people tell me, do this, Maria, and do that, Maria, and don't have it in the house. And that doesn't work for somebody like me. It just doesn't work. You know, it does not work. Compulsive overeater will always be a compulsive overeater, but I have a solution. I have a solution today. And so grateful to be able to be here and to be of service. And to be of service. Got a chance to be of service earlier today. And yeah, that's what keeps me grounded, keeps me in alignment with the higher power, you know, just trying to keep that service and giving back what was given to me, what was so freely given to me. Yes, so thanks again, Esther. It was amazing. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria F. And Margaret D., you'll take us out.
Thank you, Nancy, for your service. And thank you, Esther, for a wonderful share. I identified with so much of what you said in terms of childhood and pain, because I have been overweight, I think, for most of my life. And the feelings of shame around my body and hiding who I was and being secretive, they're all part of that shame around my body and my overweight. But I think and feeling different and feeling uncool, you know, never having clothes like everybody else. And even if I even got something, it happened very rarely because we didn't have very much money, and my mother made my own clothes, and she made beautiful clothes, but very sensible clothes. But if by chance I got something that was kind of fashionable, I'd be too big in it. I wouldn't look the same as everybody else. And what I wanted to do was to look the same as everybody else and wanting to be cool and not having that. But at this age now, coming to OA has opened my eyes and opened so many parts of my life in a very short time, and opened up all kinds of possibilities, which I love, especially all kinds of spiritual possibilities. And I think one of the things I loved the analogy, like others have said, the analogy you used, Esther, of the skipping rope. And again, it took me back to my childhood, standing in line, waiting for my turn to go in, terrified that because of my size, I wouldn't get under the rope in time and I wouldn't trip up. So I remember those kind of feelings, but I always, through pure terror or whatever, I always made it. I got through and I kind of said, yes, that didn't get me that time. But I was living with that kind of edginess all the time because of my weight and how different I would be. But coming in here, I think one of the things you said, which I really loved, was that our job in some way, working through the steps, is figuring out what our higher power expects of us and what my higher power expects of me. And that I'm finding very interesting and very challenging, but I love that piece for the moment. And I love coming here, and I'm very grateful for the groups. I'm very grateful for the sharing and the very honest sharing that keeps me honest. Thank you all.
Thank you, Margaret. And now we're going to end the meeting with the promises. I forgot who's going to read the promises. I'll write them down next week. Oh, you. Okay, go ahead, Margaret. You can unmute.
Okay.
You're muted.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret D. Okay, Esther, would you like to pick a prayer to close the meeting?
Sure. Third step prayer is always meaningful.
Okay. Everybody on 3, 1, 2, 3. God,
I offer
I offer myself
to thee,
to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt.
as thou wilt.
Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that I may show others
set up
the
victory
power of
over
love,
bears
with
witness.
power, and their way of
Those
life. May I do thy will always.
always.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Esther.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
I
Nancy.
couldn't see
God
my
bless.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone, bye.
Great to see you.
Okay. See everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.